If you look at the news, you're crazy. Seriously. If you look at the GDP numbers, the stock market, or the unemployment rate, you are living in a golden age. The lines are going up. The politicians are high-fiving. The system works. But if you look at your bank account, if you look at the price of eggs or rent, or the fact that a starter home now costs 10 times the average salary, you feel like you're living through a collapse. You feel like you're working harder than your parents did, but you're getting poorer. And here is the brutal truth that CNBC won't tell you. You aren't crazy. The economy isn't struggling. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do at the end of an empire's life cycle. We aren't witnessing a recession, we are witnessing a historical reversion. We are going back to feudalism. Today we are going to look at the history of the middle class, an anomaly that lasted about 70 years, and I'm going to show you the 4 historical trapdoors that have opened up underneath us. This is why you feel broke. This is why the system feels rigged. And historically speaking, this is usually when the fires start. Welcome back. Let's decode the collapse. To understand where we are going, we have to understand where we came from. For 99% of human history, there were only 2 groups of people. There were the assets and there were the owners. If you were a peasant in 14th century England or a farmer in ancient Egypt, you didn't own your life. You worked the land that belonged to a lord. You paid him rent, usually half your harvest, just for the privilege of existing. You owned nothing, you had no savings, you were a serf. Then something weird happened. Following the Industrial Revolution, and especially after World War II, a window opened up. For the first time in history, a regular person with no royal blood could trade their labor for capital. You could buy a house. You could save money that actually held its value. You could pass something down to your kids. We called this the middle class. But here is the scary part explicitly for us historians. The middle class is not the default setting of civilization. It is a glitch. It is a temporary period of high growth and low inequality that usually happens right after a massive war or a plague. And now, the glitch is being patched. The window is closing. We are reverting to the historical mean. The lords are buying back the land, and the rest of us are being pushed back into the fields. But they don't call it serfdom anymore. They call it the subscription economy. They call it renting for life. So how did they kill the American dream? They used 4 specific weapons. Let's break them down. Fatal wound number 1, the asset wall. In the 1700s, England went through something called the Enclosure Acts. Basically, rich landowners realized that letting peasants graze their sheep on public land was inefficient. So they lobbied the government to let them fence off the land. Suddenly, the commons were gone. If you wanted to survive, you had to work for the guy who owned the fence. Look at the housing market today. Since 2008, we have seen a massive consolidation of property. Institutional investors, huge hedge funds, started buying up single-family homes by the thousands. Why? Because they know history. They know that when money becomes worthless, which we'll get to in a second, land is king. They are building an asset wall. If you bought a house in 1980, you paid maybe 3x your annual salary. Today, in many cities, it's 10x, 15x, 20x. This isn't inflation. This is a structural shift from an ownership society to a rentership society. If you cannot buy the land you live on, you are historically defined as a serf. You are paying tribute to a lord. The only difference is, instead of a lord in a castle, it's a pension fund in Connecticut. And just like the Enclosure Acts, this traps you. You can't quit your job to start a business because the rent is due on the 1st, and it's 50% of your income. They have enclosed the American dream. But let's say you do save. You work hard, you live cheap, and you put money in the bank. That brings us to fatal wound number 2, the dilution. I talk about Rome a lot on this channel because the parallels are terrifying. In the Roman Empire, the denarius was the silver coin used by everyone. But as the empire got lazy and corrupt and started fighting too many endless wars, they ran out of silver. So the emperors had a bright idea. Let's just put less silver in the coins. They melted them down, mixed in cheap copper, and printed more money. At first, it felt like a boom. Everyone had more coins. But the coins were trash. Does this sound familiar? In the last 4 years, we printed roughly 40% of all US dollars in existence. They tell you inflation is 3% or 4%, but if the money supply goes up by 40% and your productivity didn't go up by 40%, you got robbed. This is the silent tax. If you have $10,000 in savings and the government prints trillions to bail out banks or fund wars, they are stealing the purchasing power of your $10,000. They are siphoning the value out of your labor and transferring it to the people who get the money first, the banks and the corporations. In history, this is how the middle class dies every time. The savers get punished, the debtors get bailed out, and eventually the currency collapses. You are running on a treadmill where the speed keeps increasing. You aren't tired because you're lazy, you're tired because the floor is moving backwards. Now, in the olden days, if you wanted to join a guild, to be a blacksmith or a merchant, you had to apprentice. It was hard, but it was a direct path to income. Today, we have the credential trap. We told 2 generations of kids, go to university, take on debt. It's an investment. And historically it was. But today, it is a feudal contract. Think about it. You graduate at 22. You have a $50,000 degree. That debt is non-dischargeable in bankruptcy. It is an iron collar around your neck. Before you have earned your first dollar, you are already in the hole. This forces you into the corporate machine. You have to take the corporate job to service the debt. You cannot take risks. You cannot innovate. You are an indentured servant to the Department of Education. And the worst part? Because everyone has a degree, the degree is worth less. It's degree inflation. So now you need a master's. More debt. More time. It is a system designed to extract your future wealth before you have even created it. And finally, the 4th fatal wound. The one that really signals the end of an era. Decadence and incompetence. A thriving middle class requires a functioning society. Safe roads, good schools, reliable energy. But look around the West today. The bridges are rusting. The power grids fail in the winter. The bureaucracy is bloated and useless. When the Ottoman Empire collapsed, it wasn't because of one big war. It was because the bureaucracy became so heavy, so corrupt, and so focused on extracting wealth rather than creating it that the whole thing just stopped working. We see this today in the West. Financialization. Companies like Boeing or General Electric stopped being run by engineers who wanted to build great machines. They started being run by accountants who wanted to engineer the stock price. They cut corners. They outsourced quality. They did stock buybacks instead of R&D. Who pays the price for that? You do. The elite cash out their stock options and move to a bunker in New Zealand. The middle class is left with the crumbling infrastructure, the expensive services, and the broken social contract. So, the asset wall, the currency trap, the debt collar, and the decay. It sounds grim. And if you're waiting for a politician to fix it, it is grim. Left or right, it doesn't matter. They're both managing the decline. They're both printing money. They're both protecting the asset holders. History tells us that once a civilization reaches this stage, the late stage imperial phase, it rarely reverses course without a massive crisis. We are moving toward Neo-Feudalism, a world of renters and owners. So what do? I'm a historian, not a financial advisor, but I can tell you what the survivors did in the past. They opted out of the illusion. 1. Understand the game. Stop saving in a currency they are destroying. If they are printing dollars, you need to own things that cannot be printed. Gold, Bitcoin, land,
business equity. History shows that when the currency dies, hard assets survive. 2. Reject the debt. The system wants you to finance a lifestyle you can't afford, so you stay compliant. Live smaller. Break the chains of debt. A peasant with no debt is freer than a lord who owes everything to the king. And 3. Build a skill, not a resume. The universities are failing. The corporate ladder is broken. Learn to do something that people actually need. Trade skills, digital skills, building things. Competence is the only currency that never inflates away. The middle class as we knew it in the 1990s is dead. It's not coming back. But that doesn't mean you're finished. It just means the rules have changed. The era of easy mode is over. We are in the volatile era now.
It's going to be scary. It's going to be bumpy. But if you know your history, you can see the traps before you step in them. Don't let them gaslight you. Stay awake. Stay skeptical.